I was here as interim in 2001 to 2, and there's a certain symmetry because today you're going to be commissioning your new search committee when I was here for the last search committee. And that makes that I am Rosemary's predecessor in terms of interim. And what a wonderful interim you have. I was thrilled when John and Linda Kelleher told me that Rosemary was coming. I knew her for many years, but only by reputation, as a very distinguished parish priest in this diocese, and then as the secretary of General Convention, which is a huge job. I saw her I watched her pull that off just magnificently. I was at the convention in 2000, and what a wonderful job she did, and how fortunate you are. And how fortunate you are to be here. Because I found this a marvelous parish to be in, my first interim. And so to come back on this particular time, and especially to this particular place, given these particular lessons. Now, talk with Rosemary, I should check the lessons before I agreed to come. When Rosemary invited me, I have never preached on Hagar before. Really. But the time and place, they may fit. Timing, in one sense, because Ishmael has a strong connection with Islam. And this is the last day of Ramadan, Eid. And place, because the story of Hagar and Ishmael, in a sense, speaks to the story of this parish when I was here 17 years ago. John Kelleher, Dave Wright, we were in the library talking about my coming here on September 9, 2001. Think about that. What happened 2 days later? This parish changed. And when I came here, I found something else, that not only was there the very understandable trauma arising from that attack that affected this parish directly, but there was also, I found, a phenomenon that I had not experienced to the same degree. That was that I'd be talking with a member of the parish, and not very long into the discussion, whatever it was, I would find out something about that person's past and some of the human sorrows that had come that person or that family's way. It might be from a death, or from confronting a major disease, or a divorce, or difficulty that a child might be having. There was a remarkable degree of what we might call pastoral need. And then I noticed how well people dealt with that, helping one another. That this seemed to me to be a place where people could find healing that they very much needed. And that if they themselves did not particularly need the healing, they extended it to others. Or out of their own sorrows, they were able to embrace those who were then going through some sort of suffering. It was as if it was a congregation that had many Hagars and Ishmaels. Now, who are they? Well, now, first of all, Hagar is not the Hagar, the horrible that you read about in the book. Okay, look at that. It is Hagar, the Egyptian. She was a slave to Sarah, the wife of Abraham, the great patriarch. And as you may remember, Abraham was promised that he would have a son who would be the heir and continue on the line. He was advanced in age, shall we say? And so it seemed improbable, and he got older and older, and the son didn't come and didn't come, and finally they gave up and said, all right, they figured out that he, well, shall we say there was an arrangement for a surrogate mother, and that would be Hagar. And sure enough, she bore a child. And as she was bearing that child, she did make one mistake. She kind of paraded herself in front of, when she was great with child, in front of Sarah, and there might have been the ancient equivalent of a nya. Sarah, that sort of thing. And Sarah did not appreciate that. So, after a time when Sarah had borne Isaac, and Ishmael was already running around, Sarah arranged to get rid of Hagar. Now, you could call Abraham and Sarah one of the original power couples. It was a situation of power that excluded two people who were very, very vulnerable. And Abraham went along with it. And he was nice enough to give them a little bit of bread and a little bit of water, and then they said, go. And where did they have to go? They had nowhere. So they went out into the desert, and Hagar was set to watch her son Ishmael die. And then God intervened. And God provided for what they needed. Ishmael not only survived, he prospered, became the father of many nations, and as I said, Islam very much honors him as one of its patriarchs. Keep in mind, God provided for those two very powerless, outcast, seemingly hopeless people, who in Ishmael's case had done nothing to deserve that fate, and in Hagar's case had done very little, especially given the magnitude of the fate that she faced. As the Old Testament continues, and as we get into the New Testament, from the Hebrew Scriptures into the Christian Scriptures, we hear again and again and again and again that concern for people who are in the position of Hagar and of Ishmael. We are called to pay attention to them, to be, if you will, the hands of God, which we see especially when we come to Jesus himself. Last week, if you remember, Jesus sent forth the disciples to go out into the world, and what were they called to do? To proclaim the word, yes, but also to heal the sick, to raise the dead, as if to be God for the Ishmaels and Hagars in the day of Jesus. They were doing the works of Jesus, but remember, Jesus is the Son of God, and so he is God incarnate, God coming to these people and sending out his disciples to extend that work far and wide. This is the responsibility that he gave his followers. And therefore, we share in that responsibility that he first gave to the disciples. And that's what I was seeing in this congregation. Not only the ministry that you had to yourselves within the congregation, but also how it was extended. One of the highlights of my year was Christmas in April, which is now called, help me out,
Rebuilding Together.
Rebuilding Together. Been rebranded. Okay. But going out and helping. And I see again in the bulletin some of the things that you are doing, and I read in the newsletter. You are ministering to the Hagars and Ishmaels outside of this congregation, as well as to anyone who may be in that position within it, which sooner or later is every one of us. This is good. And I hope that this is a heritage which you are continuing and which shall continue as you face this new chapter in your life. But what about the rest of society? Is it Christians alone who are called to do this? We've not understood it that way in this nation. After the Civil War, at the very end, right before it closed, it ended. Lincoln, you might remember, in the second inaugural address, talked about having malice toward none and charity for all. And then he went on to say that it was the purpose of the nation to bind up the wounds of war, to tend to those who had borne the heat of battle and suffered because of it, to support and uphold the widow and orphan. And as it happens, and I'll explain more fully after, Robert E. Lee had the same sense of purpose and mission after the war was over. And he did that by word and deed, one of the lesser known aspects of his history. Why do we do that? Because we are a Christian nation? Maybe for some that was their motivation. Because we are children of God? That may be the motivation for others. And that's what we need to remember in this time, as well as in this place. That we hold this responsibility as a people of God, however we define that, by whatever faith we may have, but especially within our church. That we as a people of God have the responsibility to do what we can for the Hagars and the Ishmaels of our own day. How we do that, precisely what policies to follow, on that there will be much discussion. That's guaranteed. But the responsibility remains. We cannot forget. The Bible never lets us forget. Because in the end, we are all in some way or another in that position. And the God who loves us calls us to love all those who are his children.